law schools, quite a few for voluntary bars, but the ones we've actually done at the bar, we've had over 2,900 lawyers do. So when we started doing this program, I wanted to keep it small. We could have filled our CLE halls with them and sort of opened it up and had big classrooms. And I said, no, I really want to keep the group small, especially since we do this monthly. And so we used a conference room, and we would typically have 25 to 30 people at a monthly program around the conference table, and that just lent itself better to discussions, to questions. And I loved it when the rooms were crowded, with people. Our leadership would walk by. We have glass walls. They'd see me in there with all these members, and they would say, it's so crowded, everybody's so cramped, why don't you go into CLE? I mean, no, I want everybody in there so they feel and smell each other, And that opens it up, and people really start to talk. And they were really great sessions sometimes. Occasionally you'd get somebody that kind of tried to dominate the thing, with their own situation, their own issues, but I got pretty good at shutting them up when I really needed to. And we would get into it. And the programs were very popular. Early on, when the layoffs were going on in 2008, 9, and 10 here, we would typically have wait lists for each session. And then as we sort of got past, the throes of the recession, and things kind of calmed down a little bit, the attendance has dropped off somewhat into 2011, 12, 13, up to now. And while our initial groups were, average probably 25, 30, now they're probably between 5 and 10 a month. So our groups are much smaller, but we continue to do them. And they continue to be popular. And our bar has kind of gotten the reputation, among bar associations at least, for being one of a handful that really devotes this much time and attention to the art and practice of starting and growing a small law firm. And the feedback from our monthly program was, you really need to have something longer than 2 days, because again, there's so much content, it's really hard to absorb. And they're right, there's an enormous amount of content. And so rather than make it 3 days, we said, no, what we're going to do is actually have another course. And so, maybe I can just get to it if I go back. So 5 years ago, we created the Successful Small Firm Practice course, which is an in-depth version of our 2-day program. And we do it once a year. The first year we did it, it was 13 2-hour sessions. We would do them on Mondays. And they would typically start end of August and end 1st of November on Mondays. And they went 2 hours. And then we shortened it in subsequent years. Now we do it, I think it's 8 sessions, Monday noon to 2:30, and a lawyer that they hired to help me, Rochelle Washington, does those. And this year, for the first time, we're doing Saturday sessions of this course, because a lot of lawyers just can't get here during the week. They can't either get in during the day, or they can't get in the evening. A lot of parents want to come to this, and so we're doing it on Saturday. So if you go to our website, this is a description of the Successful Small Firm Practice course, and the course outline is there, and then we have another link to our slides and also program materials. And there are a couple of really interesting things that we just recently put up here. Clio has a salary guide out for small firm lawyers, and Clio has some of the best data on small firms around. And it may actually be the only data that's realistic. Clio is a case management tool. It's a Canadian firm. It has probably the market share on case management, and their customer base are small firm lawyers.
And law school clinics.
I'm sorry?
Law school clinics are using it.
Okay.
I'm sorry to, yeah.
Okay. And so their market share are solos, up to firms of, I don't know, maybe 20, 25, 30 lawyers would be my guess. Clio would know best, but they sell, their license on a per lawyer basis, and so then they negotiate the higher they get. But the solo is going to spend $55, $60, $65 a month tied to their credit card for really good case management. Does time and billing, does calendar, you can upload files, any kind of file format will go into Clio. So you can have an electronic file on your client accessible any place you've got an internet connection. So they started doing surveys of their customer base, and they published them. And it's fascinating data. I mean, it's really incredible data, and they have this these trends out, and then they have their salary guide out. So, take a look at those if you want some data on small firms, how much money they make, and all that kind of thing. So, at any rate, this is what we've been doing at the bar in terms of helping lawyers start and grow firms. In terms of this longer course, it's more in-depth, and it's more in-depth because we have more time to spend on it, and because we just don't talk about some of the topics like a business plan, like fee agreements, like marketing materials, like an intake sheet. We actually give assignments and tell our members attending these programs, create a business plan, create a fee agreement for the kind of firm you want to start, the kind of firm you started. And then turn them in, and we evaluate them and all of that. And so the course, the more in-depth course that we've been doing, we do it once a year for multiple sessions. We've had 1,744 lawyers go through it. So if you add all of our numbers up, we have helped roughly 5,000 lawyers start and grow firms in the District of Columbia. And what's fascinating about that number is that while our overall membership is 107,000 lawyers, roughly half of that membership is in this metropolitan area of DC, Northern Virginia, Maryland. Our small firm demographic is only about 10% of that overall. So our small firm demographic is roughly 11,000, 12,000 lawyers. So basically half of them have attended our programs on starting and growing firms. When we started doing these programs, the typical attendee was a fairly young lawyer who had had several years in-house or several years at a big firm, and now they were on their own. And the last thing they probably thought about doing was starting their own firm, but that was the only option for them now if they wanted to survive. So they had to. That's flipped to this point where our typical attendee is somebody way more experienced. Normally, they either want to leave the firm that they're in presently, or they're being shoved out, one or the other, for whatever reason. They may be, in the big firm doing better than everybody else, so they're tired of carrying the big firm and they want to go small and take more money home. Or they're being shoved out because their practice area is not doing well. They might be a great lawyer, but their practice area isn't doing very well. So for whatever reason, they're way more experienced and good at the kinds of problems they solve. They just have no practical experience starting and growing a firm. No real experience handling money, maybe even talking about money, let alone, doing the kinds of practical, everyday sorts of things you do as a small firm lawyer. Either they've been in a big firm or they've been in a house where if they need something, they say words and it appears in front of them. Like, open a file and boom, somebody opens the file and hands it to them, Now I tell them as a small firm lawyer, you're going to be the person, going to or ordering, the file materials and putting the labels on and doing all that kind of thing yourself. So they can have, some difficulty adjusting to that. But anyway, we've been doing this, and it's still going quite well. Another interesting feature of this, and I don't know if this is true in other jurisdictions, but in our jurisdiction, while our small firm demographic is only 10 to 12% of our overall membership, those 12,000 lawyers generate nearly 50% of the docketed bar complaints that our disciplinary council handles every year.